So we are back, and we are, first of all, let me do a little, oh, we got to flip this. Hold on.
Oh yeah, because that's
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. And I even have something for you that I knew you'd appreciate. This ruggedly handsome individual right here. There we go. Look at that guy.
That's the style of Goldin shirt that I'm not particularly fond of.
Really?
Because they make you look like darts players. Professional darts players always wear like polo shirts that are made of a shiny material.
Yeah.
And when they're under the lights for hours throwing darts at boards, they end up sweating a lot, and it just doesn't. Like, I don't know. I've never really been drawn to polo shirts. I don't know what it is. So I managed to get myself a regular shirt, which I'm quite happy about.
I think you look good in that photo. It's going through the expert.
Thank you. It was one of those ones I had to take at home and set up the camera and set up the lights and set the timer and try and look relaxed at the same time. So it was challenging.
Yeah, I was going through like all the experts, and man, it's fun. Like I saw right above you is like, I screamed out to my wife. I'm like, there's a head of pop culture at Goldin. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, it's just really cool. So, but yeah, we are here to talk about a few items that are coming up. And as always, you send me the coolest stuff and stuff that I've never heard or seen of sometimes. And we can start off with this, because I don't think I've ever even heard of a quadruple cover in my entire life. And they're all 9/8 too. Like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen or heard of. I don't even know how that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a little bit about this. So when a comic book is manufactured, typically they do the inner part separately from the cover, and then the cover's stapled to the comic book, unless we're talking about the 1960s and 70s annuals, the big oversized square bound books, which were all stapled together inside. The pages inside were stapled together, and then they glued the cover on.
Okay.
Those square annual size ones. But these are like more typical, where the whole thing is stapled together in one go. In fact, it's a quintuple cover, so there are 5 covers on this book, and that's
acceptable. Sorry,
it's okay. Don't worry about it. 3, 4, 5.
This is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. The only thing I can imagine that happens is when they create the covers from the different paper stock, maybe the ink's not quite dry when it's stacked, and they get stuck together a little bit. I'm not talking about the individual cover now. Remember that we're talking about a giant sheet.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just theorizing, thinking out loud. Those sheets get stuck together, and then they're trimmed all together, and then they're stapled all together at the same time. It's all automated. No one's overseeing this. There are Golden Age books which are double covers, but very, very rare, because I think a lot of that was done by hand. But since the advent of automated comic book creation, there have been people who've found double, triple, quadruple covers. The more covers, the rarer. And this is the first time I've ever seen 5 covers on a book. And the chances of them all being a 9/8 is almost 0, but here we are. And that's why I chose this, because it's just so unusual.
It's gotta be. So for those who know CGC and grading, and I'm starting to learn more and more, and this is a random thing, but this is the way my mind works, right? When you get, like you said, the annuals, and there's different size internal packets, right, that hold the books, right? There's the regular, and then you have, and sometimes, look, I got a recent one. I think it was a variant of the, I think it was Amazing Fantasy 1000, the D23 one, and they definitely put it, that's a thicker book, and they put it in the thin one because you can tell it's like literally against the edges of it, and it's fine. It's a 9/8, so it's fine. But this must be insane, because how much thicker is 4 extra covers? So this must be, that's where my brain goes, like how interesting this must be to hold and see in there. And I mean, I'm just fascinated by this.
Well, when you find a double cover in the wild, it's super strange, because we always open a comic book cover and see the newsprint. So you almost think like you're hallucinating or something when you open a book and it's the second cover looking at you. You're like, hang on, what's going on here? So imagine the person that discovered this. I mean, it just kept opening the covers, going, "Wait a second, is there?"
Oh my God.
I don't know how it would have happened. It seems like if I'm right about how the manufacturing process works, this must be one of only a few copies that were ever produced. I mean, all the stuff that collectors lust after, things like stamp collectors that lust after the errors of printing and stuff, that are basically printers' waste. And the reason they're so rare is that the printer's job is to sort of weed out this stuff and destroy it. That's their job. Like, you want everything to be identical when you're producing something in mass.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still talking about human error, right? So sometimes people are going to miss that, oh, there's 2 covers on this book. I also suspect that maybe once in a while a bored printer might go, well, I wonder how many covers I could actually attach to a book.
Exactly what I would do. And I would be like, I'm only going to imagine the look on someone's face when they pull this out. So let's give it 5 covers.
Just can they give it 5, Captain? They won't take it. Maybe it will. So, like Scotty was right. You can just keep pushing the envelope and get more dilithium crystals in there. And maybe out there someone has done like 10 covers on a book. Who knows? But this is an actual manufacturing error. CGC would know if someone had done this after the fact. So this is a genuine oddity. And I called it out because I thought, wow, this is great. I actually want to own this.
I know. I was thinking, I mean, you got me bit by the bug when you were talking about, I think it was the Venom, with the no ink, the lethal protector, and explaining how rare these mistakes are and how, they could be valuable. They are valuable, but could be even more valuable down the road because it's just stuff you'll never see again. It's super fascinating. I love this kind of stuff. And, for those that don't know, obviously this is the first full appearance of Carnage. So we all know the book. Probably the coolest first appearance of Carnage that's out.
I mean, who knows what this is worth? There's never been in a comparable sale, so I have no idea what it's going to sell for. I think a 9.8 is worth around $300 or $400 at the moment, a typical like standard 9.8. So I don't know. It's got 5 covers. It's got to be worth 5 times that or more. Like, I don't know. Maybe I personally feel like it should be worth 50 times that. Because
I think it's 10x right now. It's at like 2,500 is the lowest bid, so it's already up there, and with 8 days to go, so it's gonna get. It might.
Yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be a really fun result.
So let's move on to the next one. In the meantime, I'm just gonna pull this back up, but just kidding. This is cool. So Black Canary, we just actually, I mean, cool. If you think about the moment in culture as well, we just said goodbye. First of all, this week is brutal. Succession ended Sunday. Ted Lasso ends tomorrow, which I just found out during our podcast last week. I didn't realize that it was the finale, and I'm like, the finale, and which is really depressing because it's a great show. And then we say goodbye to The Flash, which is one of the really pioneers of TV. Got a little kitschy a few years in, but great show, great cast. So when I think of Black Canary, I always think of the show and Katie Cassidy and things like that. So, but this is gorgeous golden age book. I'll let you talk more about it. 10-fold what I know on this stuff.
Well, honestly, I don't know much more than you. I don't think. I mean, I think Sean and I, in our time at Selling Comic Books, maybe owned 1 copy of this, and it was a really rough example. This came in a pretty major collection that we got consigned at Goldin, and it was clear that the guy had really good taste, because every book in the collection was interesting in some way, and it wasn't just your typical run of Silver Age, which, by the way, I love Silver Age books. I think they're awesome, but you tend to see them all the time. Like you always see Spider-Man, you always see Avengers, you always see Thor. You don't see these Golden Age books that often, and the Spring Elite is kind of focused on Golden Age. That we do have Silver Age and modern stuff in there too, but we've tried to make it like a bit Golden Age flavored. And I tried to pick a book that wasn't, one of the aspirational, wish I could own that one day, I could probably do without a kidney kind of things. Like we have a Superman 1 and an All-American 16, all things that are going to go for 6 figures, and not everyone watching this is probably going to have that kind of money. So I was trying to figure out, this is special because it's the first appearance of Black Canary, the real first appearance of Black Canary, not the modern equivalent that, you know, like a lot of collectors will take the second best alternative, right? If they can't afford the original, they'll look for something that resonates with them, but more recent. But this one's not going to sell, I don't think, for like, it's not, I can't even tell you how much this is worth. I mean, it's so rare that you see this book. And so it's one of those ones with low census numbers. It's a bit of an oddity when you find it and you're like, I have no idea what this is going to sell for. But it's not, I'm sure, going to sell for $20, $30, $40, $50,000. It's not that league. And it's a shame. But at the same time, that makes it fun and exciting and affordable. And this is really a piece of comic book history that most people could aspire to own at some point. It's not an Action 1.
And a great cover too. I also love the I mean, I guess, you know, when you think of history and you think of how things evolve, I love that this is considered a bondage cover where, you know, maybe back when the code was started or before pre-code and all that stuff like that, like bondage meant something different. You know, we think of certain, you know, and there is stuff out there, but it feels almost like captured and held captive instead of, you know, it's funny how the word might have changed, but I love that stuff like this is considered a bondage cover because it doesn't, to me, it just feels like she's in trouble and she needs help and she's captive. And I love how that's considered. I think it's fascinating. I love the history behind these things. I think it's so interesting.
We should do a stream on bondage covers at some point because this would not be considered a classic example of the breed. There are some very edgy ones out there. Let's just say that. Another story for another day.
Yeah, bondage and horror. Like I in my head, I think of the one where the guy's holding the head. It's just not, that's insane. I think you guys had that one recently. That's just bonkers to me. Like that they actually put that out there at one point.
I actually think there were worse than that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There are, for sure. There's one of my favorites is one where a guy is buried up to his neck in the ground and there are all these ants going towards him. That's just, I don't know. Anyway, we'll do that again on another day as well.
And for those who don't know where to go for all this stuff, I created a nice little situation here. Goldin Auctions. This QR code will take you to the current page that essentially just, it's all comics. It's a mix. It has the 100 mixed in, the Spring Elite, the weekly. And so I will pull this up every now and then for a little sponsored Goldin QR code break.
That's great. Thank you so much. That's so much easier than me trying to explain how to find it.
Just impressing myself with my lack of technical skills. I know you missed that intro on the Collecting 101 that I had that one time. That was a gorgeous 3-second segue. All right, so next one. This is cool. Wow, this is really cool. So yeah, tell me about this because this is just screams classic history.
Yeah. So we talk about the inappropriate covers that led to what was called Seduction of the Innocent, which was a book that led to what's we all call the Comics Code Authority. So pre-code books like this, which were, it's arguable whether or not these were actually marketed to children. I mean, that was the argument that was made in front of Congress. But I don't really think books like this, I mean, just looking at it, would appeal to a child anyway. Okay, now we are kind of crossing the line there because a child is basically anyone up to the age of 18, right? So someone in their teens might look at a book like this and go, "Oh, that looks cool. I can't wait to read this." But for the most part, kids aren't interested in things that hurt people or graphically horrific images. They're just not. This is kind of one of those ones that's a little bit on the edge because no one's actually being hurt. They're just being threatened. But it's still it's a really harsh image. The interesting part about this is that there were the pre-code horror books, which were specifically horror and suspense, and those ones definitely started the trend. And then the crime comics that were already sort of established in the 40s after Dick Tracy was a thing, sort of went down the same path. So you see some crime covers like this one, where it's clearly a horror book, really. They're trying to jump on the horror bandwagon. There's another famous one where a woman's hair is being set alight on top of a stove, which is just an awful thing to even say out loud, let alone see. But this one is it's probably the second most famous crime threatening life cover thing without any actual gory things happening on the cover. It's really, I mean, I wouldn't even think of threatening someone with a hot poker, but there you go. This is what we did in the 1950s, apparently.
Is it an electric hot poker?
I don't know. I mean, I think CGC calls this the hot poker. I don't know how the electric thing would have worked.
50s too. I also think like it's very modern, like not to be, and you know, again, I mean it in a more of like an analytical, historical way. Like her outfit's very modern, and even the art. I don't see. I see the story. I don't see the artist. The art is really, I don't say well done, but it is. It's beautiful, and it actually feels advanced for its time. But maybe that's just me. Like when I look at this, I'm just like very realistic as far as like the people, and then also just obviously the two guys with the fedoras. They're old school gangsters, but like there's a little modern take on it too. So it's really like a gorgeous cover, aside from it being crazy, but it's a gorgeous cover, like, and well done.
It's what, for me, the light source is the poker, right? So sorry about that. No problem. The light source is the poker. So it's interesting the way that the shadows are cast on and the light on people's faces. I mean, if this were just framed and they didn't have a comic book title on the front, it would be an amazing piece of art. I mean, it's actually, subject matter aside, which is very controversial, it's actually a beautiful image.
Yeah.
And the reason you look at her outfit and go, wow, that's modern, is because we recycle fashion so much. I mean, now it feels modern because, well, we're probably, was it every 15 years fashion circulates? So this is probably the 7th time this has looked modern. And in 10 years, you probably look at that dress and go, oh, God, that's an old fashioned dress. You know? We're just trained to look at fashion a certain way now. But I love this book. I think it's one of the rarer examples of this breed where you have an extremely tough subject matter. And that's the reason it's valuable. I mean, I'm sure the two books either side, this one in the run, are like $20, $30, $40, $50 books or $100 books, depending on condition. Wow. Because there's just nothing special about them. They're probably just another crime book, but this one is well known and sought after.
So cool. And then the fourth thing and the final, you sent me something truly special. That, I mean, and talk about an iconic artist. And this also feels extra. So I was reading the description. So Alex Schoenberg. So for those that don't know, obviously one of, if not the golden age artists of the, you know, timely. It goes on and on and on. Like, the Schoenberg covers are everywhere. This is super unique, and did he paint over a magazine cover? Is what I was reading. Like, 'cause that's fascinating. Like, this is this him? That's what I was reading, and maybe I got confused. Maybe I took it the wrong way. But this is
it's a little confusing. So the backstory of Alex Schoenberg is an artist in the 1940s, and not like artists in the 1990s and 2000s and so on. They were paid by the project. I mean, they call it the bullpen, where people were hired en masse and they just like had projects thrown at them and they had to produce them. The art was given to them afterwards, but there was no market for it as such. There's a famous story about artists using original Golden Age art to mop up a leaky floor because the ceiling was leaking in their New York apartment and they had water over the floor. So they just took stacks of Golden Age art and used it to mop up the floor and before throwing it away, which is one of the reasons why this stuff is so rare. It just wasn't valid. There wasn't any market for it. You couldn't sell it. You couldn't give it away, really. So Schoenberg in the 50s had moved on because I think, you know, those artists were like guns for hire and they would move around and you know, artists as well, being temperamental, didn't always make the best life choices and often found, you know, they were often addicts. They were often like almost destitute. And so I think quite a few of them would just do whatever. Like if someone, like the way Stan Lee would sign pretty much anything you put under his nose, some artists would just someone said, here's $50 to do a commission, they would just do it. It doesn't matter what it was. And Schoenberg, I don't think, is in that category, but this is from a period where he was doing the illustrations for science fiction magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were researching, because this piece was offered to us a few weeks ago only, and we're like, oh, I hope it's published. If it's published, it's going to be worth way more than if it's not, because it's just like something he dashed off for a friend or something. Mm-hmm. That's something else. So the original publication was the planet without the rings, and the background was like it was, and there's some silver stuff added to it. And that's what's happened. It's not like he's painted over a magazine cover. This was used as a magazine cover, and then he added some stuff afterwards. I have no idea why. Maybe a friend said, oh, I'll buy that off you. I really like satin, though. Could you turn it into satin? And could you like put some silver on it? Like, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he was doing like fairs and he was taking them around, and he just thought it would be more interesting if it were like had some stuff added. And I can't tell you, but I can tell you that this was published. It was used on a magazine cover. So it's a published piece of Schoenberg art. And unlike comic book Schoenberg art, which, you know, is big five figures, maybe even six figures, this starting bid at $2,500. There is a bit of damage in the top corner on the right, but you honestly, in a frame from 3 feet away, you're not going to notice. And art is not the same as comic books. Like, art is not really intrinsic. The value of art is not intrinsically affected by its condition unless it's completely destroyed. You often see original art because the paper they used wasn't archival paper. It was they often pasted stuff on to like change it at the last minute and used like liquid paper on it and stuff. Art was a working piece of production material, which was usually disposed of. So when you find it, it's quite often not in the best condition, because once it's used, it served its purpose by the publisher. They kind of discarded it into a huge pile, and then eventually someone dealt with it. So although this isn't in pristine condition, this is absolutely stunning. It's a big piece. It'll look amazing on your wall. I don't care what your apartment looks like, where your house looks like. This will look amazing somewhere in your house or apartment.
It fits anywhere. And I think I found the original. Looks pretty close. Yeah, the background seems.
Yeah, everything's original except the rings weren't there, and like he changed the planet, and added the silver waterfalls. But that's a published Schoenberg piece. And honestly, I tried to pick some stuff here that would be aspirational but affordable. And this has got to be top of the list of aspirational and affordable, because Schoenberg's a legend, and that's it. So I chose that piece for that reason.
Well, if you think about, like, again, I actually think stuff like that's cooler. Like, if you think about when you're deciding between pieces that you want, whether it's something to get signed or whether it's something to hang on the wall or whether it's something to put in your collection, you know, again, like, if you're straight looking at the finance aspects of stuff and like, oh, we make money on this or whatever, something like this, as far as just having something that is just truly unique and rare compared to having, you know, an AF-15 or whatever, you know, it goes down the list. It's one of a, I mean, it's amazing. And it's the rarity and the story behind it and things like that, I think, are always going to, if you're, you know, I don't want to say, I don't want to like diss anyone and say like, oh, a true collector or whatever, but if you're really, you know, into the history and the story and the lore behind these things, like something like this is just, it's fascinating. And I love the way you share the stories behind these things too. You know, and I think
the thing is, like with art, the thing is, it's not for everybody, right? So to me, it seems one of the worst things about people that own fine art, and high end fine art, is that they never show it to anybody. It's locked away in a safe, and the whole point of it is you're going to make money on it. The nice thing is, I have several pieces of original art. You can probably see over there.
I love that Batman. That's
maybe one day it'll be worth something. I don't know. I paid $5,000 to have it done for me, and so it shows you that although $5,000 is a lot of money, it's not. I need to sell a kidney money. I always go back to that. So it's something you can do for yourself and enjoy. I've had this for years, and I love it, and I see it every day. Mm-hmm. It's right by my desk. This piece, I'm seriously tempted to buy myself. I'm not actually allowed to, but I wish I could. It's something that you could put on the wall and love every day. And then in 20 years time, who knows what that's going to be worth. But if you enjoy something that you're buying, and maybe at the back of your mind there's a possible financial windfall in your future, like, it pays for itself. It's literally it's completing the look of your place, and it's got history. It's by an amazing artist, a very famous artist, and what could possibly go wrong with that? I mean, it just seems like a bit of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, especially like for people that are maybe say they're Schoenberg collectors. Like I know a few people that I'm connected to and work with, and that love that era and are big fans of that era and that art, and have a lot of those classic Human Torch or Toro covers or things like that. And if that's, you hit it on the head. Like that's the thing when when you come home, or when you're in your office, or when you're doing, there's so many things in life that are grinding and hard. But if you're a fan of something, like obviously I gravitate towards, Spider-Man, or, other things like that, like the Punisher piece that my friend made back there, or things like that. I think when you have your favorites and you're a big fan of an era, or an artist, or a character, having something like that, and people come by like, what is that? And like, dude, let me tell you the story. This is, this guy. And then I think, most collectors and a lot of comic fans, maybe some of the newer ones don't know, but most people know who Schoenberg is. I mean, that is like, iconic is the easiest word to describe it. And so if you know someone who's like a huge collector of that and lives by that, this is something that would tickle them pink. Like they're just like, wait, what is this? Like, it's just so cool. And
I mean, trying to find an original copy of that magazine in the same condition or better than the actual original art that was used to create it might be quite challenging. There might not be a copy of that magazine out there that's as nice condition as the original art that was used to create it, which is boggling. You think about that the odds of this surviving, given that they literally could not give art away for a very long time. It wasn't until like the 1960s that people started to realize, oh, we could actually, there's value to this thing. This is the first page of this comic book or magazine that was created 25 years ago. There's never going to be another one. Like for the Incredible Hulk 181, the cover art to that has been destroyed. It was destroyed in a fire. So
I didn't know that.
That's an incredible story. And I think that art, unlike any other collectible, there's all these weird stories about art, like the Munch, the Scream, that story, it's cursed, and if there's often people die in suspicious circumstances if they have a copy of it, and it's just weird stuff like that. I think people talk about tortured artists, and I think artists put a bit of their soul into their work, and so to own a piece of art by somebody that you're a real fan of, I mean, to me that just feels like, that's something you should aspire to, even if it's only a $50 piece and it's somebody you really like in a convention. Like, start somewhere, but that is a one-off, and I chose it because I don't think it's going to break the bank, but it is going to make someone's day when they own it.